Okay, so first of all, I need to apologize. In one of my earlier videos, I kept referring to equation as being in standard form. That actually wasn't standard form. In that case, what I meant was this is the form that you're used to seeing. Standard form is a slightly different way of writing an equation. But what we want to use right now for our purposes is something called slope-intercept form. And that's actually our y equals mx plus b, y equals mx plus b form. You can tell this is slope-intercept because other than our two variables that we're working with, the two numbers we have are our slope and one of the values of our y-intercept. Makes perfect sense to call it after the two most important components of it. But we're not always going to see an equation in this format. And in order for us to be able to apply the equal values method that we learned yesterday, we really do want them to be in this format so that we have one variable alone on one side and everything else on the other side. That way, when we have two, let's say we had another equation that was y equals gx plus f, we could end up setting mx plus b equal to gx plus f, and then we would just have to solve for our x. So before we dive into today's activity, I just want to practice a little bit showing you what converting something into y equals mx plus b format would look like. So let's say we have this equation. Let's say our equation is 4x plus 2y equals -8. Okay, not mx plus b form. We've got three different numbers going on. We've got x and y on the same side of the equation, not like our y mx plus b. So generally, when we're converting to slope-intercept form, we want y to be the variable that we get alone. So let's work on that. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of my 4x from both sides. And then I'm going to end up with 2y equals -8 minus 4x. Then I can divide both sides by 2. And I end up with y equals, and remember when we're dividing the whole side by 2, we have to divide this by 2 and this by 2. So -8 divided by 2 gives me -4. -4x divided by 2 gives me -2x. So now I have y equals mx plus b form, and I could even rearrange these a little bit so that it's closer to what I'm used to seeing. Y equals -2x minus 4. And so now I have an equation that I would be able to use for my equal values method. So let's practice one more. Let's take a look at if I had, let's say, something kind of basic, 2y equals -8. So this one, still not in y equals mx plus b form, and it might be a little bit confusing to some of you because there's not even an x in it. But let's go through the motions anyway and try and get y alone. One step, divide both sides by 2. I end up with y equals -8 divided by 2 gives me -4. Now, in case you're looking at this and going, how's that even an equation? That's just a statement about what y equals. Well, what this would mean is if I were to draw a graph of this situation, and I'm doing a very abstract graph here, but you'll still hopefully get the point. Go label a couple of my axes. All right, so let's say that's 1, 2, 3, 4, -1, -2, -3, -4, and that would also be -1, -2, -3, -4. So what y equals -4 is saying is that no matter what the value of x is, if I were to pick x equals 1, well, y would be -4. If I were to pick x equals 2, y would still be -4. If I were to pick x equals -4, y would be -4. If I picked any x value, no matter what, my y is still going to just be -4. So I end up with a line, a horizontal line that runs right through -4. So even though this isn't a line with a slope, it's still a line. It's still a linear relationship. And I could even graph these two relationships to figure out where they would cross. Right? So here's my y equals -2x minus 4, and I know that that -4 is going to relate to my y-intercept. I have a pretty good hunch where they're going to cross, and my slope is -2x. That means down 2 over 1, Or if I wanted to go in the other direction, since that's a little more helpful in this case, I would have gone up 2 and back 1. Up 2 and back 1. So my line there is going to end up looking something like that. And just as I thought, that point right there at 0, -4 is the solution to that system of equations. So let's get started.